We're back and recording in the midst of so much happening in the world. And in all of the negative, heavy stuff, there are some significant positives that I want to highlight. Resistance is in the air. Community and joy, love, people are coming together in support of immigrants as these terrible ICE raids and threats of mass deportations are being carried out in communities all across the country. And there's a couple of headlines from the news that I want to highlight. One is just the volume of demonstrations happening across the country in support of immigrants, many of them led by young people and immigrants themselves, happening in places that you might expect. Los Angeles, for example, has been demonstrating for 7 straight days. No surprise. Los Angeles is, there's a lot of immigrants in this community, but places like Chicago, New York, Denver, Seattle also turning out. And then places that I wouldn't normally have expected, places in the South like Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Nebraska, Utah, Texas, and Arizona. Humans are showing up for their humans. It's so powerful and beautiful to see. There's also this report that the U.S. Senate phone line has been jammed with 1,600 calls per minute. A normal rate for them is 40 calls per minute. But people are getting engaged, calling their senators, voicing their opinions, and not just about immigration, other stuff too. There's a lot happening, but this is beautiful. And these are real-time reminders that we, the people, have power. And we can own it and stand in it and come together and look out for one another because it works. Now, another story that I want to flag is actually one that makes me really sad. I was following it and hoping for a different outcome, but a young man, he's 24, he's a middle school science teacher, was detained by ICE at a quote routine immigration hearing that he had. This was in Florida. He came to the United States at the age of 13. He was a DACA recipient, which means that he had the right to work and live in the U.S. But after attending that routine immigration hearing and being detained by ICE, he's now been deported. He was deported, I believe, a couple of days ago. And, the United Teachers of Dade have shared that this young man did not have a criminal record. And now this middle school science teacher has been separated from his family, his students, his community, and his country that he called home. And I've talked a lot about the power of art holding up a mirror to society. And that's what we're doing today, because a short film called Lien is currently up for an Academy Award for Best Live Action Short Film. And this film is about a family encounter with ICE at a routine immigration hearing. It's heart-stopping, it's heartbreaking. Frankly, I think it needs a trigger warning because it's really intense. And the film's director, Sam Cutler-Kreutz, is with us today to talk about the film. In addition to being nominated for this Academy Award, he's an award-winning film director and cinematographer based in New York with other films including Flounder, Trapped, Fallout, and Trust Me. And we're doing things differently, as I've said before. We're welcoming my brilliant colleague, Joanna Cuevas Ingram. She's a senior staff attorney at the National Immigration Law Center. Joanna's joining the conversation. She's a litigator with significant due process, equal protection, and civil rights litigation experience. And she has a pretty incredible and impressive track record of winning in the courts. She's here to share information about our rights and what we should know if we were to have an encounter with ICE. This will be a powerful conversation, and you don't want to miss it. This is the NILC Freedom to Thrive podcast, powering pro-immigrant narratives, one story at a time. I'm Victoria Ballesteros, Executive Vice President of Narrative at the National Immigration Law Center. Sam, Joanna, welcome so much to the podcast. I'm so excited to see you both.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Sam, congratulations on your Academy Award nomination.
Thank you. It's
you must be feeling really excited about that. What was the inspiration behind the film? What led you to make this film? Yeah, and did I say the title right? Sorry, can you say the title of the film?
Of course, it's fine. Yeah, the title is a play on words, so I sort of love the fact that people don't quite know how to say it. A lien is how we say it.
A lien,
like a lien on your house.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And, it's it is very exciting. The Academy Awards is very exciting, but also it's when you're as an artist and you make something, you don't exactly know, what will happen with it. And it's really exciting to see the art that you make kind of meet its moment. And I think this film is really meeting the moment, the current moment, and there's some sort of cosmic forces that are intersecting these two things together. And I feel like um, the response that we've had across the board from the film has been really incredible, and people have feel like very much resonating with it and with the experience that it kind of portrays, and people are feeling, I think, very kind of like fired up by it, and which is exactly part of the reason we made it. And so it's exciting to see it kind of have its moment, to kind of help spark and be part of that conversation that we're having as a country about immigration, which is so much of the national dialogue right now. But to go to your earlier question, why we made it, or what the kind of the genesis of it was, so David, my brother, and I, who worked together, were co-writers, co-directors, co-producers. We made the film together. Um, we read a New York Times article in 2018 about this exact process, and we were just absolutely struck, sort of like flabbergasted that it was possible, legal, and that it was happening to people. It felt so cruel and sort of so twisted. The idea of ICE entrapping you at your own green card I-130 interview, your own sort of green card marriage interview. And so I think that, sort of sparked us to just, how do we activate, sort of advocate against this process. And I think this particular, what struck us about this process in particular was, in the kind of banal cruelty of it, this sort of the uncertainty, the waiting, and the kind of the fact that they're trying to go do everything right and still being, taken by ICE, struck us as sort of emblematic of the larger of the process and the larger problems, where most people are just trying to do the right thing. Most immigrants in the country that are here, legally or illegally, are just here to be with their families. They're here to go to the grocery store and pick their kids up from daycare and live a normal life. And so trying to do the right thing and still getting deported for it or persecuted for it is something that I think felt resonant to the larger problem.
Yeah. So you had no idea then, because it sounds like you started making this film, or at least got the idea for it in 2018. Or did you know? Did you have a sense that, or I mean, obviously you're not a psychic fortune teller, so you wouldn't know that the film today is so timely and relevant and so at the forefront of people's minds and people's experiences.
Yeah, it's funny. I do think in some ways, whatever, life mirrors art and art mirrors life. But I do
Yeah.
think part of being a maybe not a good artist, but an artist who is attuned, in the right ways, is one who is picking up on the sort of cultural zeitgeist, finding a way to kind of soak it up and recrystallize it, form it into some shape that a viewer, can engage with. And I think in this case, we're not fortune tellers; we don't know the future, but this issue wasn't going away, and then the wider kind of maybe socioeconomic or political or zeitgeist forces that have created a society that is more tribal, that is more kind of closed-minded, and in the last 10 years or whatever, I think those forces aren't going away, and they've
Yeah.
only become more to the forefront as the election of Trump and the kind of current political state.
Yeah. There's this very prevalent notion that those of us who work in the immigrant rights space hear, I can't even tell you how many times, this sentiment that people feel like they support immigrants. I support immigrants who do things the right way, right? There's always this
Sure.
talk about doing things the right way.
Yeah.
And yet here we see in life, and here we see in your film, this family that's trying to do things the quote right way, and they're
Yeah.
still getting caught up in this immigration system with devastating consequences. And so I
Yeah.
just want to challenge that notion and challenge that sentiment. And I think your film does that, whether that's intended or not, right?
Yeah.
You're showing a face, and it's also so humanizing. There are these
Yeah.
beautiful little moments between this family, and what shirt is he wearing and things like that are just so humanizing. And even the slow moving wheels of bureaucracy in this moment where this mother is frantic, and
Yeah.
the person working behind the counter is just moving very slowly and not feeling the urgency that a mother would feel, right?
Yeah.
It's all just very humanizing and very beautifully done. Thank you for doing that. I'm
Yeah.
curious though, like what specifically about this issue, right? Immigration, immigrants drew you to the story. Do you have a personal connection to immigration, or you just saw this as just an important topic that needed to be covered.
Yeah, and I think the personal connection I have, I think, is a personal connection that most Americans have, which is if you go back one generation with pretty much anybody in the country, you're a generation away from an immigrant. You
Yeah.
know, like most people are. It's
Yeah.
I think there's this sentiment that somehow once you come in the country, it's like, oh, okay, everyone behind you, close the doors, whatever. But I think it's amazing that if you look back in your family, our my grandparents on my mom's side came from Russia. It's like wherever you're from, it's amazing. Everybody is truly, part of the immigration process. And so I think it's, I don't have a connection to this particular, New York Times article issue, but I think we all have a connection to immigration. And and as citizens of the country have a responsibility to engage with it and to kind of make the country that we want, and it's our job to tell the lawmakers and people in Congress, like, hey, this is how we want it to be. We get to choose, I think, in some ways. And I think it's easy in this kind of current climate, which is incredibly overwhelming. And there's so much noise and so much kind of statistics and articles, and it feels very abstract and very kind of overwhelming to kind of, how do we cut through that noise and bring people, and filmmaking has that ability, that kind of, it's an empathy machine in some ways. It can really put people in a way that many other art forms can't do into the shoes of somebody else that's not their current experience. Can that help people think about, this problem in a way that feels more specific and not so kind of abstract?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the beauty, I think, also of art and film and creativity and culture, right? Is being
Yeah,
able to do that. So
100%.
in addition to the Academy Award nomination, I'm going to keep saying that because I think it's incredible and I'm super happy for you.
Amazing.
What has been the response, the audience response, or what are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, it's been amazing. I think, it's been depressing, I guess, in some ways as
Yeah.
well, but on both sides of that, there's been a response, which is like truly, I think, the most, sort of, maybe one of the most satisfying things about the piece coming out to the broader public. I think the biggest response we've heard across the board is just how much people come up. Somebody else yesterday was talking to us about this, like somebody saying like, hey, this has felt so resonant to my experience in a process that was similar to this in immigration in some way. The claustrophobia, the uncertainty, the sort
Yeah.
of death by 1,000 paper cuts, this sort of like just endless waiting and bureaucracy, this kind of Kafka-esque scenario that we've built for everyone, I think is,
Yeah.
something that struck David and me about this process and about this particular aspect of it was, it feels like it shows off this idea of a process that's been built for humans, but is fundamentally inhumane, you
Yeah.
know? And so I think, people across the board we've talked to who've seen the film have been just, so, I don't know, taken with the capturing of their experience in
Yeah.
some emotional way, whether it was, specifically this particular process or not.
Yeah, that's so very well put. So I'm going to come right back to you, Sam, but I want to bring
Yeah.
in Joanna into the conversation because, Joanna, I would love to hear your response, your reflections as an attorney who does this work, right? You've looked at the film, you watched it. Break it down. Like, what would your response be as an attorney? Not giving legal advice, but just more like what people in a situation like that you would want them to know.
Yeah. So again, what this is not legal advice, but just general know your rights information and education. I think the film really crystallizes that this can happen to anybody,
Yeah,
who is following, all the steps they're required to. And in that vein, it's important, I think, if this family had an attorney, that the attorney prepared them well for this interview, right? That they had the attorney's number on speed dial to prepare for this moment. And especially because this family had a child, making sure that they had emergency plans just in case, right, for guardianship and powers of attorney, um, so that their child would not be threatened with child protective services custody, right? That the child is protected, right,
yeah,
in this process, no matter what happens. But to even prevent any of that from happening, to have the attorney come with them to the interview if there is any concern. And if not, to again have that number on speed dial if um, the father was stopped in the hallway, not to run, because that could give ICE their argument that they had probable cause or reasonable suspicion to arrest him, right? So staying put and knowing your rights and saying, no, I have the right to remain silent. I do not wish to speak with you without my attorney present. and I need to speak to my attorney. Can I have permission to call my attorney? And keep asking that, because that is your right. You have constitutional rights when you're going through this process, or even when you're not going through this process, right? If you are at home, if you are at your employers, if you're at a hospital, if you are at a school, there's a thing called the Fourth Amendment, right, which protects you from unlawful search and seizure, right? So knowing your rights is half the battle, and it's critical. And in fact, in this environment, Mr. Holman has recognized, CNN reported, that people knowing their rights actually has prevented ICE from engaging in mass raids and other types of conduct that we at NILC would consider potentially unlawful, right? Because people know their rights.
Yeah.
And people know they don't have to speak with ICE unless they have an attorney present, unless there is a warrant signed by a federal judge, right? And many times ICE may come, presenting themselves as other types of law enforcement or without informing you as to your rights. So it's really important that that all of our loved ones do know their rights, right? And know that they can call their attorney, they have their emergency friend's phone number, they know if they're going through the process and they have an A number, they know their A number with USCIS. So if anything does happen to them, someone can locate them if they've been detained with their A number. Having all of those emergency plans in place is really important, right? Because if your rights are violated, you have the right to seek legal recourse with an attorney. And you can continually assert your rights, right? So that you have a record that you asserted your rights even if they violate them, right?
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. And I think this film really just, again, crystallized that it can happen to anybody. It's just really important that everybody have contact with either legal aid or local bar association, get in contact with an attorney that you're going to be able to call if this ever does happen to you, if you don't have one already. And that you also have your plans in place to protect your children and protect your family if anything were to happen to you, even if it is unlawful and you have to go through the courts to fight for your rights.
Thank you for sharing that. And I want to share something that you clarified for me offline, which is, as an undocumented person, those constitutional protections still apply to you, right? So those
Correct.
rights, you have those rights regardless of whether you're
right.
documented or undocumented. We all have these rights, which is really important for us to know. And I've seen it all over social media, Joanna, including I've seen you on a video doing a Know Your Rights talk. All over social media, people are sharing, like, again, the community showing up for the community and sharing this information and resharing it millions of times, which is so powerful and important. And I really appreciate you spending time with us. Joanna, where can people go for more information, more Know Your Rights information?
You can definitely visit our Instagram for NILC. You can also visit our website. We have resources for schools, hospitals, employers, social service agencies and others on how to implement training on the Fourth Amendment with your staff to make sure they do not admit ICE without a judicially signed warrant and they do not consent to ICE entering their premises, right? There's also Know Your Rights information more broadly for individuals. You can check out our website, nilc.org. There's a whole host of, other colleagues and allies, folks out there that are producing great Know Your Rights content. Just make sure you do know your rights. If you have access to one of those red cards from the Immigration Legal Resource Center, that's also a great resource to make sure you know your constitutional rights and you're ready to show that card if you ever have an encounter with an ICE agent. I was going to say one more thing, and I think the most important thing for all of us is that, and to take care of each other as a community, take care of ourselves, take care of our loved ones and our family members and friends, is make sure everybody knows their rights, because that is what is pushing back against unlawful and unconstitutional conduct, right, by ICE officers and agents, is knowing your rights, and there's power in knowing your rights.
That's right. Thank you, Joanna. Sam, I want to come back to you and ask you, where can people who haven't seen the film but who want to see it, where can they see the film?
Yeah, of course. It's online in the U.S. On Vimeo, staff picks. You can go find it. If you Google it, I guarantee you it's the first thing that's going to come up. And then also it's going to be coming to theaters very soon. On the 14th, I think, along with the four other Oscar live action shorts, as well as the animations and the documentaries. So it's an amazing program if you want to, bring your family or whatever. 5 really incredible shorts packaged together into a 120-hour program. And then it's currently, being placed outside of the U.S. on various services in Spain and other places. But yeah, that's sort of ongoing. And then Academy voters can watch it on their own screening room app, which they have access to.
Beautiful. Congratulations again. We're going to be watching the Oscars and rooting for you.
Thank you.
I wish you all the best. I'm really rooting for you to win.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
I want to thank our listeners for spending time with us. For more immigration truths, visit us at nilc.org and freedomtothrive.com. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. I look forward to continuing this conversation with all of you.